creative friends, and welcome to the Stampin' Squad. My name is Cheryl Dorsey. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today is Monday, May the 5th. It's Cinco de Mayo, so happy Cinco de Mayo. I want to welcome you to my video premiere today, and we're going to make a fun fold. So first, I'm going to start with a designer series paper from Storybook Moments. I love this pattern with all the cute garden implements. That piece of designer series paper is 4 inches by 11.5 inches. Then I've got a piece of Mossy Meadow cardstock, and the Mossy Meadow is 4¼ inches by 5.5 inches. Next is a piece of basic beige cardstock, and that is 3.5 inches by 4¾ inches. And finally, a piece of basic white that is 3¼ by 4.5. I've got a strip of the Mossy Meadow that is 1⅛ by 4 inches. And here I've got a little square of the basic beige that is 1¾ by 1¾ And then I've got just a little scrap of basic white. So those are all the pieces that we need to create the card today. I usually do a live video on Mondays, but because my wrist is broken, it's hard for me to create a card in a reasonable amount of time. So we've got a pre-recorded video today. I used 2 different die sets to create this card. The first one is the Storybook Garden Patch dies. And then the second die set I used was the Stylish Shape dies, and I used one of the squares from that die set. So I thank you for jumping in here with me today. I'm in the comments if you're watching the premiere, so jump in the comments and let's chat. I used the Storybook Friends stamp set. For this card, I used the sentiment that says thank you so very much. And I am using Mossy Meadow ink today to coordinate with my card. A little bit later on, I'm going to show you a special technique, and I'm going to use some Misty Moonlight for that technique. So here we go. First, I'm going to stamp my sentiment using the Mossy Meadow ink. So I'm inking up my stamp, and then I'm going to stamp it on that little piece of basic white cardstock. And lo and behold, I actually got a good image here when I stamped that. Kind of surprising. Then I took that and I used that little square die from the Stylish Shapes. And I ran it through my die cut machine and cut it out, and that gives it a nice little border, a little stitched border around the edge. So the next step is to take that sentiment and adhere it to the basic beige layer. So you know I like to use my multi-purpose glue. So I went ahead and did that, and I've got that put together. Now we need to score this piece of designer series paper because we're making a fun fold. So the side of the paper that you can see when you put it on your scoreboard, that's going to be the outside of your card. So we're going to score this at 5¼ and at 10½ 5¼ and 10½ Now here I've already folded and burnished my score lines. I'm going to show you how to fold your paper. There we are. It's kind of like a Z fold. So the next step is to grab that strip of Mossy Meadow cardstock, and we're going to adhere it just underneath the flap on the end of this designer series paper. So you see it's going to just slip right in there. and then we're going to adhere this down. So here you can see that I have done that, and it gives a little firm edge to that designer series paper right over on the right hand side there. Okay, let's put some things together. So I'm going to take this piece of basic white, and I am going to layer it on top of the piece of basic beige. And then next, I'm going to take my designer series paper and layer it on top of the mossy meadow. That is my card base. So the next thing I want to do is take this little die cut and adhere it to the corner of my sentiment. You remember in the Storybook Moments designer series paper pack, there are 2 sheets that have lots of little die cuts. The garden implements, some flowers, some animals, all different kinds of things. You just punch those out, and then you can use those on your projects. So I'm going to use these little seedlings and put that on the corner of my sentiment. I want that to be popped up on the front of my card, so I have put some dimensionals on the back side here and removed the backing, and now I am ready to adhere that to the front of my card. So I'm just going to center that up here and press it down. Now here's the special technique that I wanted to show you. So I've grabbed these 2 dies from the Storybook Garden Patch dies. It's watering can. And I used 1 die to cut out the watering can in boho blue, and then I used the other die to cut out this trim piece in misty moonlight. Now you could just layer those 2 together just like this, that would be fine. But I wanted to give a little bit more character to my watering can, and I wanted it to look a little bit rustic. So I took my Misty Moonlight ink pad, and I grabbed a sponge dauber. And if you've never used one of these before, it's super simple. It just fits right on the end of your finger. And then what I did is I just tapped that on my ink pad and got some ink on it, and then tapped it on my watering can. So I'm adding some shading, adding a little bit of character there, and giving it more of a rustic look. So now when I take this layer and put it on top of it, it really gives it more of a 3-dimensional look. So this little watering can is going to go on the inside of my card, right down here in the corner. So I'm just going to adhere that. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you another card with a different die cut piece on the inside. But here you get a closer look, and you can really see kind of the texture coming through of that watering can. All right, we are almost finished with this card. But I want to add some embellishments, right? We got to have a little bling. So for this card, I'm using the antique pearls. I love these. So there's 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. And I used 1 of each. I put them on the front of my card to just bling it up a little bit. And you remember on the inside of our card, we've got the watering can and the reverse side of that designer series paper, which is really so beautiful. So we get a little peek of it on the front, and then the inside is the back side of the paper. One more look. There it is. And then I've got another one The little cottages are on the paper on the outside. And on the inside, we've got all the vegetables. And you can see my other little die cut piece. It's a stack of terracotta pots. So I use the same technique to give that some dimension and some texture. And those are the two cards. I love a fun fold. If you guys have been watching for a while, you know that. So there they are. There's our two cards today. This is such an easy fun fold. If you've got Designer Series paper that you like both sides and you don't want to hide one side, this is a perfect card to use that. This is the perfect card. You get to use the A side and the B side of your paper. And then I just put a simple sentiment. This designer paper came with these beautiful little die cuts, so I used those to decorate my card. And that's it. That's it. So if you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you leave a comment. And thank you guys for being patient with me while I'm healing. I had surgery this last week, and so I am on the road to recovery. It's just going to take a little bit of time before I'm all better. But I will keep bringing you projects. So keep coming back. I will see you again very soon. Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.